Welcome to the Veterans Archives podcast, where we honor our nation's veterans by preserving and sharing their stories. You can also hear Veterans Archives on Wreaths Across America Radio every Thursday at 5 p.m. To learn more about our mission, watch veteran interviews, or find out how to record a veteran story, please visit veteransarchives.org. And if you or a veteran you know needs support or resources, we encourage you to download the Battle Buddy app from vetlifetoday.org. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. We're here talking with Takura Nyamfukudza, who served in the United States Army. So thanks for taking time out of your day to talk with me.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a surprise when I got the voicemail. Actually, I saw it ringing, and I thought it was spam, but then I listened to the voicemail. We played phone tag for a few days, but we got it done.
Here we are.
Yes.
Excellent. So we'll dive right in. Yeah. When and where were you born?
I was born in Zimbabwe, 1981. So in June, I'll be 45.
Okay.
Yes.
2 years before I graduated high school.
Wow.
Thanks for making me feel old. Appreciate it.
No trouble.
Appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Aim to please.
So did you grow up in Zimbabwe or did you, when did you make your way here? I want to hear all about your childhood.
Yeah. So yes, I was born in Zimbabwe when I turned 16. So education system is slightly different, right? It's a former British colony. So I took what are called the GCE O-levels, just the high school finals. My sister came to the U.S. first, then my mother came. So after I finished high school, I was in boarding school for 4 years. We go to school year round. We don't get the summer off like we do here. But the day after I finished my last final, I got on the plane and joined my mom and sister here. So I worked for a year, a number of different jobs, Burger King, women's clothing store. I sold knives, worked at grocery stores, all sorts. And then I started college when I was 17. And yeah.
So you had that time to discover what it was you didn't want to do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
And so you just have one sister? Do you have any other brothers and sisters?
Just my mom and dad had just my sister and myself.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And did you go to boarding school your whole time in school?
Yes.
Oh, what was that like?
Unlike here, though, it's not for bad kids.
Right.
Right? Because normally when you hear that somebody here went to boarding school, it's because they were just, a handful and the parents just, let me get them out of the house. But I think it actually prepared me well for the Army because every year from the time you are a freshman, we called it something different. Anyhow, every year you get more privileges, and just by looking at somebody's uniform, you can tell what year they're in. And there were even certain pieces of grass that you could not walk on until you had achieved a particular grade. And very regimented. We woke up at a particular time. We ate at a certain time and place, and so it was practice. Little did I know it was practice for the Army.
Sounds very much like the Army, honestly.
Yeah.
Do a lot of push-ups there, did you?
Boatload.
Yeah.
We woke up at the same time. We had breakfast, personal hygiene, go to class, eat, sports, study, lights out, repeat the cycle. On the weekends, sometimes we would get weekend passes. And here, what you would call, the varsity. The varsity teams.
Yes.
We all had to support them. And so the entire school would be there cheering them on, and we had war cries. And so, yes, but it was a lot like the Army.
Sounds like a great experience.
It was. I loved it.
Yeah. And so what about your parents? What was your dad's vocation? What did he do?
So my father he was a teacher for a long time, but the last name, anyone from Zimbabwe, or certainly my age or older, and some people younger too, know the name because he's an author. And actually, I studied some of his poems in high school. And the teachers would, so this last name is the surname is the same as yours. Do you know this person? Oh, yeah. So is it a cousin? No, not a cousin. Oh, but you've met this person? Yeah, I know him. Not an uncle? No, not an uncle. And finally we landed at, so father, oh my goodness. And they would act like I wrote the book, so help write the poems. Nah, long before they'd even thought of me, he'd written this stuff. So he was a teacher for a long time. And actually one of the guys that went to grade school, what we call primary school, I guess, grade school here, he's out in Hollywood and working on turning one of my dad's books into a movie. But, and my mom, she's always been a nurse. She's a nurse today. From before I was born, she was a nurse. So going on, it's 40-some years she's been a nurse.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so you turned 16. Your mom and your sister had come to the States, and then you followed on. What was the driving force? Why come to the United States?
So my mom left when I was 13.
Okay.
And there were a lot of economic changes happening. And she just didn't think that based on where she thought things were going, that would be the best place, for our future, just in terms of opportunities and so on. And she turned out to be right. Zimbabwe, unfortunately, enjoys the dubious distinction of being the first country in the 21st century to achieve what we call hyperinflation. And actually, there isn't a Zimbabwe dollar. You go there and you spend US dollars. That's the currency, because what once was the local currency, to buy like basics, you would need so much of it. Literally, people would be carrying, duffel bags of cash in there. So,
right.
But I'm not claiming she's clairvoyant, but I guess, she just thought, boy, this is probably for the future of my children. This is probably not where I want them to be. And so for school and all of that, she brought us here.
I think moms have a certain amount of clairvoyance.
No arguments out of me.
That and eyes in the back of their head is what we say.
There you go.
Absolutely. And I think that people that watch the news and see things don't really see Zimbabwe probably the way that you saw it, right? It was a wonderful place.
Absolutely. So, and also because I grew up before, I don't have any kids, but it certainly based on what we do here, I had a different childhood. We were outside playing all the time. And certainly my first time experiencing snow was when I got here. So we were outside all the time. And the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, that certainly was my experience. There were no strangers anywhere in the neighborhood. And shoot, I didn't know my mom's first name until I was 20-something, right? Because we respected everybody, adults and such. But frankly, a lot of the rules that we have here, we didn't need, because if I had gone to any store, liquor store, and purchased alcohol and started drinking, you didn't need the police. You didn't need an MIP statute in place. Whoever saw me engaged in those sort of shenanigans would have done something about it, and then would have told my mom. And because they had to do something, I had another thing coming. But it was fun. And of course, I still have friends from my childhood who I'm close with today. But it was a completely different place. People were just friendlier, and it was a great experience. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah. Well, and that whole thing too is, it's. I think sometimes people feel it's better to get in trouble with the law than it is to have your mom find out what you did. Right?
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. That's all the law you needed.
So when I started college, again, I was 17, so I was younger than a lot of my classmates.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to a house party. Cops came and they said, all right, anyone who's over 18 or 18, just leave. And I should have just left, because they really were checking IDs. But, to me, hey, cops, position of authority, you don't. So when they took me into custody, I had to call my mother. And she had to drive 4 hours.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. I would have preferred to just do a weekend and not have her find out. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
yeah, yeah. What's it like for a young man? I mean, you're 17, you're in college. I mean, you had been in boarding school, so this wasn't really new, but college here has to be a little bit different than boarding school back home, right? So, or back in Zimbabwe. So,
Yeah.
what was that like for you?
So I was still assimilating, first of all, to being in the US.
Right.
So little things. For example, I'll never forget, like an eraser, what you would call an eraser here, right? I grew up calling that a rubber.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember leaning over and asking one of my classmates, a young lady, excuse me, do you have a rubber? Let me have a rubber, please. And she looked at me like I had, and I didn't understand. Like, what's the problem?
Right. I just want to erase this, right?
Right. Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're weird. In my mind, I was like, why is she so stingy? What's the problem? Okay. But I mean, just little things like language. It took a while to assimilate. And then going from, so I experienced a lot of firsts. And at that time, once I got to college, right, I experienced enough things that, some of the parlance I was familiar with and so on. But it's a completely different place, So college has its own different culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a lot. It took a lot. And I think that may have had something to do with why I gravitated. Once I had the opportunity to enlist, I was like, oh yeah, this is something that is more like something I'm familiar with and lived and experienced for a long time. I was coming out of a class and they had a Humvee with a 50 cal and a big screen with people jumping, airborne troops. I was like, oh wow, I could do that. Yes, you travel the world and sign me up. So it was, that was more predictable, was more comfortable, a lot like boarding school. And so, yeah, but it was a lot because just coming, you're still trying to assimilate. And even on my last deployment, I remember we were going from the barracks to a range,
Mm-hmm.
we were qualifying. And then my platoon sergeant was immediately in front of me. We were the last ones to get on the bus. I said, Sons Roviero, this is my first time on a yellow bus. And he said, well, sir, good thing it's not a short one. Right? And at that point, I'd been here for, 20-some years, but still I was experiencing first, right?
Right.
Because I graduated back home, so there was no reason for me to have done a yellow bus. So there's still some things, even though I've been here for quite some time, that I didn't experience, and it doesn't happen as frequently, but there's still things that I encountered for the first time. And I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, it was, college itself, just being here in the first place was a lot, big change.
Mm-hmm.
And then college thrown into a whole new different mix with different people from different places. So yeah, it was a lot.
Well, I think it's one of the fascinating things about the United States is that even if you speak English, they speak a different English in Arkansas than they speak in Maine, and they speak a different English in California than they speak in Florida. It's very hard. It's very regional. There's different dialects, and it's very hard, I think, to learn how to speak English in America.
And it no matter where you learn here, what you learn in the classroom setting, what's in the textbook,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't match as soon as you step out of that room.
Right.
It doesn't match how people communicate.
Yeah, it's learned experience is what it
Exactly.
is. So you did you get your degree then before you enlisted in the military? Did you finish college?
So, not before. So I enlisted when I was in my beginning of my sophomore year.
Okay.
Okay, 17, 18, out of 10, 99, April. Yeah, that would have been the beginning of my sophomore year.
Okay.
So I didn't have it yet. I was working on it.
All right.
I didn't have it yet.
Now, did you go to basic training then right away?
Yeah. OSIT once. Fort Benning.
So were you like in the ROTC program then, or?
So no. I went green to gold, enlisted man for 6 years, and then OCS, and then I was an officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very similar to what I did.
Yeah.
I did it way later in life though.
Yeah.
But okay, so okay, I understand. So you enlisted and you went off to basic training. Tell me, what was that like day one for you? Because I don't think that was like boarding school at that point, right?
No. So it was a different army then than today. So this is 1999, and Combat 11 Bravo, Combat out. There were the only women we saw were when we went to the DFAC.
Yeah.
And so the stuff the drill sergeants said and could do it's much different.
It was very colorful.
Yeah, we'll say that. And I was with people who came from all over the country. So I was the first Black person that a lot of the people in my platoon had ever been around.
Right.
But what was emphasized was, look, here there's only one color, that's green. And very quickly, a lot of people, for whatever reason, either because they couldn't make the PT or whatever it is, or they couldn't qualify. Some people tried to run away, and
They're out there.
Yeah. So the herd was cold, and I it's not supposed to be easy because of the nature of the undertaking, but I learned something that I believe strongly today, right? Friends will help multiply joys and divide sorrows. So no matter how tough it was, you knew you weren't doing it by yourself. You suck it up and drive on. The troop to your left and your right will help you through it. All of that team building is stuff that I rely on here, even today, with our team here in practice. So it's supposed to be challenging, right? So physically, mentally, I embraced the challenge, and I was glad that I toughed it out. But certainly there were moments when I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?
Kind of question your own judgment a little bit.
Right. But no, I've still got friends from back then. People who I, without having to explain why, if I called today, they'd be there. And likewise.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you were infantry then, 11 Bravo.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was all one training session then, right? You went, you went to bed after boot camp and woke up in
AIT. Yeah.
In AIT, but it was all really.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was, boy, again, the language. it was, I mean, everything from, so again, this is before cell phones, right? So I don't know what they do now, but we arrived and they said, you have 2 minutes. You call whatever phone number. If you get a hold of somebody, great. If not, you leave them a message. Tell them you'll be writing a letter, and that was our communication with the outside world. So these troops today, I imagine, I don't know. I don't know what they do with the phones and,
Yeah.
you know, I'm guessing, I imagine that they take them and, you know, they have to turn them in with all the other personal effects. But yeah, we arrived, called, I'll be writing. And when the letters came, it was worth the 25 push-ups that they made us do. And then when we figured out, oh, so if I write a letter, or all of us in the squad write a letter to this guy, doesn't matter who the letter comes from, he's gonna have to, as we would say, beat his face, right? Do the push-ups.
Right.
So
I haven't heard that in so long.
Yeah,
I've been told to beat my face more than once.
yeah,
Actually, had somebody tell me to beat my face until they were tired.
there you go.
Yeah. I remember those days. So you all
but we
decided to
didn't
write
rest.
one poor guy a letter
That's right.
each.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
must have been entertaining to watch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good times.
So you get through AIT, and then what's next? What happens after that?
We deployed to Bosnia, and we were running missions into Kosovo also. Then came back, and very early on, actually during that deployment, Captain Thompson, I'll never forget. I don't know what it was, saw something in me, whatever it was, but it's on me. Listen, you should become an officer. I was like, what? Me? What? And at that time, officers were people who we only saw when, you know, the full bird was coming, or the general and so on. But otherwise, we didn't know who they were, what they did. And the guys from the South who would call any of the NCOs sir, because that was what they were accustomed to. I work for a living. So it didn't compute in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But after the deployment, Officer Thompson stayed on me. And then eventually went to OCS. And my last deployment was to the sandbox. So yeah, I did 6 and 6. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I went ahead and wrapped up school. And then I knew I did not want to, so criminal justice is what I got my degree in. But I knew I didn't want to be a probation officer or cop. So law school just seemed like the next logical step, right? So unlike some people who they're 5 or 6 years old and they know, oh, I want to be a judge, I want to be an attorney. That wasn't me. It was just a process of elimination. And actually, when I started, because my sister, she's a dentist and my mom is a nurse, they strongly encouraged me to go the medical route. And then I was like, no. It took me exactly no time to figure out that wasn't for me. So I switched to political science. But yeah, I was...
So you were 6 years enlisted, and then you went to OCS,
Yep.
and then you were 6 years as an officer. And so how many more deployments did you have then in between all of that?
So I just one and one.
Oh,
each.
okay.
Yeah. So, and, you know, the second one, of course, very different because as an enlisted man, you're just worried about, okay, we come off the mission, we're done, you clean your stuff, you do your PMCS, and we were in the gym, right? 24-hour defense. I got big, the strongest that I ever was. And until it's your time on the mission, right? Or you go from black, red, green, QRF. Once you're off the mission, you have no other worries in the world. But, you know, as an officer, you're never done.
Right.
You're never done.
Right.
Doesn't matter where something happens. Your troops could be however many hundreds of miles away, but you're still responsible for them, right? You can delegate authority, but not responsibility.
Right.
So
were you a company commander then on that deployment?
XO.
XO.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
XO, was that a company level then?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
And when I was thinking about when the commander got wind of me thinking about hanging out my boots, the battalion commander actually came and said, listen, before we get on the plane to go back Conus, I'll sign the paperwork, do whatever we need to keep you in. I said, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate it. And, but I was like, yeah, this is, I'm ready to see what's going on in the civilian world, and wrap up my school and everything else, and then.
That's a tough choice at 12 years, though.
But that was that point, right? Fish or cut bait.
Yep.
Unless you're gonna go all the way through, it doesn't make sense. And I was still young enough, I suppose, that if the civilian thing didn't work out for me, I could come back in. But I was at the top of my game. I knew I was a good troop, and rather than being booted out, I felt like I stepped aside on my own terms. And also, because I came in as Joe Snuffy, taking 200 troops downrange was something I never, ever thought I would do. So already I'd accomplished more than I ever thought I would when I first signed the papers.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't easy, but...
I feel like the military does that, though. When you step back and look at the things that you accomplished and did, it was always more than you thought you could ever do.
Absolutely.
Because it's mind over matter, right? Your body will do what your mind tells it to do.
Exactly. Listen, the number of road marches or company runs, everything where, look, your feet, your back, everything is telling you, anytime now, we can stop. But up here, one foot in front of another, and you may not know how long the run is or the ruck march is, when we're going to stop. But eventually, you just make it. But it's
right.
That Mike Foxtrot. You just tough it out. You hang on. And, but a lot of people would just quit. They just, Yeah.
Well, it was my experience. You never believe what they tell you when they say it's going to be a 7-mile. It's a 12-mile ruck march. It always ends up being a 15-mile, right?
Exactly.
You're going to do a 7-mile run today. It ends up being 10 miles.
There you go.
It never...
Exactly.
I stopped believing what they told me. I just kept going until they told me I could stop.
Exactly.
And I think those lessons carry on into your civilian life too.
Absolutely.
It gives you perspective on what was really important.
Exactly. Mission first. Look, like they always told us, okay, look down at your blouse. U.S. Army first and then your name. So it's not about you, right? Country first. Same thing now as an attorney. The interests of my client, right? The people I'm representing. And it's like I told my troops, courage is not the absence of fear, it's carrying on in spite of it. So the number of times, I've picked a lot of juries, and they'll never know looking at me, but those butterflies in my stomach, if they knew how I was feeling, they wouldn't want me as close as I sometimes come to where they're seated, because they're like, this dude going to throw up, but work through it. You work through it. And also, failure to plan is a plan to fail. Mm-hmm. But once you plan the work, you have to work the plan. So that is critical here, right?
Well, and no plan survives the first shot fired either. So, it's all that big circle that happens. So let's back up a little bit. So you get out after 12 years.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to know that, hey, this is the last time I'm putting this uniform on? How'd that feel?
I don't know if sad is the word, but I knew I would miss it.
Yeah.
And I still have the Kevlar I still have certain things. And I knew, though, that there were things inside me that would never leave me. But it was times when I questioned if I'd made the right decision. Mm-hmm. Listen, especially during law school, I was like, oh, my goodness, while a lot of the skills and values that Uncle Sam poured into me helped me make it through law school, there were times when I was like, boy, this new thing I'm taking on, this is requiring a lot of mental horsepower, which if I just stuck with what I've known for so long, I wouldn't be having to wrap my mind around this. And so there were a lot of times when it got tough, and it did many times. But then I said, you know what? But even there were times when I was like, this sucks. And I saw a lot of people fall off and quit. And I didn't want to be that guy. I was not going to be that guy. But no, I definitely missed it. And I know it's a different army now. But yeah, no, there were definitely times where I questioned my decision. Questioned my decision many, many, many times. But now, I can say now, in retrospect, no regrets, but I did miss it for a long time.
Right.
And I got those calls, and there were several times I was like, yeah, no, don't do it. Stick with the decision you made.
Yeah.
But no, I did miss it. I did miss it. Absolutely.
So where did you go to law school?
Cooley. So right here in Lansing. And I took a couple of classes at the Auburn Hills campus before they closed that down.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all my classes, except for those two, were right here in Lansing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what year did you graduate? What year did you graduate and then pass the bar?
2013. So So graduated January 20th of 2013. Took the February bar, and then May 20th is when I got the envelope telling me that I'd passed, and I was like, yes. So I'll tell you, I was more relieved than anything that I just didn't have to take that what I call a quiz again, a quiz from hell. And then I started. So May, June, so 3rd of July of that year is when I started with, so at the time, my current business partner she had a partnership with someone else. They did family law and criminal defense there. So my business partner and we were the criminal defense folks. And after 4 years, we just left the family law folks where they were, and we started this.
Yeah. Why criminal law?
So if you had, until I started doing it, honestly, I thought, I know I was going to be a litigator. I know I wasn't going to be a desk jockey. Absolutely not. But I would have told you that I was probably going to be a personal injury plaintiff law. So, all those billboards you see when you're 96 and 94, the gloves won't fight for you, and the buses and all of this.
My favorite one, though, was this past Christmas with Santa Claus. There's in Detroit. The Santa Claus slips on somebody's walkway. Yeah.
Slip and fall. Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
That's what I thought I was going to be doing. But once I started working with my then boss, but now business partner, day one. So unlike at some law firms there's some firms that have like thousands of attorneys, literally offices all over the country, some all over the world. Now, in some of those firms, if you ever make it to the courtroom, they're going to park you at a desk where you're just cranking out motions and writing briefs and so on. But because we're a small firm, day one, we were in court. I was writing motions, arguing them, briefs, and everything, trying cases. I was like, yes, this is what it is, right?
Right.
So I guess it was, when I was an enlisted man, the same way I looked at polls, right? Mm-hmm. Listen, I'm combat arms. We're in the mix. We're doing the stuff. So I wanted to be that dude. And to me, that was the litigator rather than a transactional attorney. But I was like, hey, I'll try it out, this criminal defense thing. And I fell in love with it immediately. So I until I started doing it, I would have told you I would be doing something else. But once I started, yeah. It's like quicksand. I wasn't going anywhere.
Right? Yeah. So how was the decision to break off and start your own firm with your partner? Was that talk me through that?
So while there were, two departments, the family law and the criminal defense, there were some differences in the procedures that we followed. And I think because we had in the criminal defense department a team, because we're such a small firm at the time, we had a group of talented people, right, who were all as passionate about what we did. Because I'll tell you, a lot of people think that just because we represent somebody, that we condone their behavior, right? That's not true. And what a lot of people don't realize is everybody in the community should actually want a strong defense bar, because every time I file a motion to suppress and evidence gets suppressed, whoever you are, if you're driving your car, that cop when you drive past, he's going to be like, do I really want to deal with that bow tie guy? So our efforts benefit people who we don't represent, right?
Right.
Anyhow, it just seemed to make sense. But they had been partners for quite some time. And it wasn't as difficult for me because when I came in, I came into a, well-established department. So I think it was tougher for my now business partner than it was for me. For me, I was like, yeah, we're a great team. Let's go. Let's
Right.
go. But it was, you don't know, is that phone going to ring? Are people going to call us? So initially, of course, you're nervous. But we only do criminal defense work. So we are one of the few firms here in Michigan that don't also do, like civil stuff to supplement.
Right.
But it was it also because unlike some of the firms that people are familiar with, because they see them everywhere, right? It's like, boy,
There's certain names that everyone knows.
exactly.
Yeah.
Is are people gonna know who we are? Is the word going to get out there? Because we work on the referral system, right? We now at this point have had, judges, even prosecutors refer family members and people to us because they know the value of our work. But in the beginning, it's like, boy, was this the right decision? But thankfully, that phone was ringing, and we've been busy, stayed busy.
Well, that's a good segue because I want to ask you this too. You said in the beginning, talk to me about the very first time it was just you in the courtroom. You're the guy. Tell me, what was that like for you?
Let's take a quick break.
Before we continue, we'd like to share a resource that may be helpful to veterans and their families. The Battle Buddy app from vetlifetoday.org is designed to connect veterans with support, resources, and a community that understands their experiences. If you or a veteran you know could benefit from those resources, we encourage you to download the Battle Buddy app and learn more at vetlifetoday.org.
So thankfully, just like in the Army, crawl, walk, run, right? There wasn't. So there's some firms where, for whatever reason, where they say to the associate, you know what? Here's your file. Go to this courthouse, figure it out. But there wasn't anything that I did for the first time without at least talking through it and having my, at the time, boss throw some hypotheticals at me. But but again, the difference between a rubber ducky and sending those 5.56 rounds downrange is quite different. But it was still helpful. It gave me a little bit of confidence. But that's where I remembered standing in front of my first platoon, and they're looking at you, they're sizing you up. It's like a first date. And I knew that I was setting the tone. And also, the first platoon I had, my platoon sergeant, he hadn't had a platoon leader for like years.
Oh.
So in his eyes, he didn't need me.
Right.
What do I need this butterbar for? I don't need him. My platoon's been running just fine without it. So, but not, it was, I was like, this is real life. And depending on how well or how poorly I do, somebody could find themselves behind bars, and then it just doesn't affect them, but also their family. So it was something I took seriously. But yeah, it was scary. It was scary. But my first solo 3 trials, I won. I'm going to try them the same way today because, more experience and so on, and I'm more comfortable in the courtroom. But just like, every time you go on the range, you keep your head on the swivel, that muscle memory, you pay attention. But it was scary. It was scary that butterflies, because this is the real person.
Yeah.
Who is depending on me, and what happens on this record could determine the course of their life for a long time. Yeah, it was scary, but
Absolutely.
it went well. I was like, okay, I'm good at this. I'm pretty good at this thing. Yeah.
So as good as you are, has there ever been a time where someone's just kind of thrown something at you and you didn't see it coming?
Yes. Yes.
How'd that feel?
I tried to hide the shock.
Uh-huh.
And I'll tell you this, as a defense attorney, I think, so a lot of people will ask, so how many trials have you won? What folks don't realize is, well, at least to me, others may not agree with this, but I think as a defense attorney, what one counts as a win is different than what, lay people consider a win.
Right.
So even if you are better prepared, more knowledgeable, that does not necessarily mean that as a defense attorney, your client will be acquitted, right? We
Right.
take the facts as we get them.
Right.
I've never said to somebody, ooh, I don't like those facts. I don't think I can win that. So sorry, we can't help you. It was a sobering experience, the first loss. And there were things which the person I was representing didn't share, knew at the time, but didn't share with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, really, this is how I'm finding out, and this is something you knew. But I had done everything I could at that point to make sure that the person trusted me and that they understood I had their best interest at heart. So I was like, you know what? If they still decided to keep stuff from me, which I would use to help them, then, that's something you can't take personally. And the only way I was able to sleep was saying, look, given what I knew and what I could prepare for based on what he shared and what the government shared, I did everything that I could. But no, it's not a fun feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was trying to keep a straight face and looking at him and thinking, wow, you knew this. And but it's not my case, right? Ultimately, it's his name in the caption.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't a fun feeling, though. It wasn't a fun feeling. I was like, man, all that time. But I guess, you know what? Like an Olympic athlete, they prepare for 4 years. And if you're a sprinter, it may come down to, depending on what race it is, 15 seconds of your life, but you prepare for a long time. So I just had to separate myself from and not take it personally. But yeah, it wasn't fun. I was like, man.
Well, and sometimes, I don't know the best way to ask this question. But an acquittal lack of an acquittal isn't necessarily a loss, right? Because sometimes people have done what they've been accused of doing, and at that point, the best thing you can do is get them the best deal possible and make sure that their rights have not been violated. And so sometimes when you don't get an acquittal, you haven't lost. You have protected that person as best you can, right? Am I
100%. So
okay?
Look, depending on what the person is accused of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, in Michigan, at the state level, we don't have the death penalty, right? California, Texas, other states do. So there are offenses which in Michigan, if you're convicted of, you could draw your last breath behind bars.
Right.
So someone who comes to you in that position, if you can somehow, either through pretrial practice or just negotiating and tenacity, somehow manage to get an offer for them where nobody wants to serve any time. But if you get them a deal for 5 years, life and 5 years.
Big difference.
Absolutely. So, especially for somebody who has, young kids, right? 5 years and 15 years even is the difference between missing, a graduation and then potentially coming home when your child is a grandparent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. And So different folks. So let's say somebody is a commercial driver, right? They have a CDL. If they find themselves in a situation where I negotiate something that saves their license, their ability to keep, earning a living and supporting their family, that's a win. Even if we don't go to trial and we hear the words not guilty. But absolutely, yes. So and that is why I was saying, as a defense attorney, you learn that a win isn't like a basketball game, right? Whoever scores the most points, or who wins the most case. No. Sometimes keeping a piece of evidence out in a trial, that's a big win, because if unfortunately you don't prevail, right, then that can't be considered under certain circumstances, even when it comes to the sentence, aggravating stuff. So, with not guilty verdict is not the only win.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's what a win is not a win and a loss is not a loss. It's all relative.
There you have it.
All right. Well, we've talked about a lot of things. Yeah. You've led a fascinating life. This has been a lot of fun. I have one last question I want to ask, but before I ask that question, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to talk about? Because I like to think I'm a good interviewer, but every once in a while I miss something.
I've never heard anyone say that criminal defense work is easy. I think it's fun. Certainly, we're dealing with serious matters, and people ask me, how do you do it? How do you keep going? I learned basic training. You have to go in your mind to that happy place. And I love to travel. And, thanks to Uncle Sam, while it's of course, being stationed somewhere and then just, venturing out when you got a weekend pass or whatever the case is, not quite like going on a vacation.
Right.
But sparked that interest for travel, that travel bug bit me. And that is my happy place, right? That is what rejuvenates me. I take as many trips as I can. I visited all 50 states, and Uncle Sam gave me a head start on many of them. But no, just a lot of the things that made me a good soldier, I think, make me a good attorney. And just even outside of the courtroom, I still lean into very heavily today. But no, I think we've covered everything that comes to mind for me. Yeah.
All right. So just one last question.
Yeah.
If someone's watching this or listening to this 100 years from now, when probably neither one of us are still here,
right,
what message would you like to leave for people? What would you like them to take away from this conversation today?
So we live in interesting times right now. And go back to that comment where the drill sergeants told us, listen, we only see one color. While there may not be one color, I think what my time in service helped me realize is at the end of the day, we are all people who want the same things, right? We all have families, people, somebody we care about. And we have a mission. Of course, when you're in the Army, you have a mission and you set aside those things. And it's unfortunate that today folks are unwilling to set aside like the things that are so divisive, and that we were trained not to focus on. So, it would be good if we could see each other just as the human beings we are. So, and recognize that most of us all want the same things, right? To be happy, to love and be loved. And yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for taking time out of your busy day to sit and talk there. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Veterans Archives podcast and for helping us honor the service and sacrifice of our nation's veterans. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with others so more people can hear these important stories. To learn more about our mission, watch additional veteran interviews, or find out how to record a veteran story, please visit veteransarchives.org. And if you or a veteran you know needs support or resources, we encourage you to download the Battle Buddy app from vetlifetoday.org. You can also hear Veterans Archives on Reads Across America Radio every Thursday at 5 p.m.